Do you know who or what a rabbi is?
Yes. A rabbi is a Jewish religious leader. I think generally synagogues are led by one or more rabbis.
Do you celebrate Passover?
Not currently. Starting from when I was about 8, my family celebrated a Christianized version of Passover. We would celebrate the Passover Seder either in the church where we were, which was a Protestant church along the way, or else in our family. And that actually was pretty meaningful to me along the way.
Does Judaism have saints?
Not officially, as far as I know, but I think that they, certainly talk about outstanding people in goodness and holiness. I think there's at least an official list of the non-Jews who were especially righteous in regard to the Holocaust. And if they have that kind of list, then I suspect they probably have other lists as well.
What religion was Jesus?
Jesus was a practicing Jewish man.
Do you believe the Messiah has already come or will come?
The Messiah has come, and he will come again.
What are the different responsibilities of pastors and rabbis?
So do you want a list for both?
Yeah.
Or how they're different?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're comparing priests and rabbis, then the rabbis wouldn't be celebrating the 7 Catholic sacraments, but they would be involved in some things that are similar. For example, they'd be involved in some way probably with circumcisions, although I don't think they're the ones who actually do it. I think they're specialized. I'm not sure whether they're classified as rabbis or a different category. They certainly are involved in marriages. But I'm sure they would be involved in Jewish ritual practices, but they wouldn't be the same ones as Catholic ritual practices. Their main worship service would be on Saturdays. And I don't know if Jewish synagogues do things in their synagogues each day, like Catholics have daily Mass. I don't know if they have communal worship daily. So I would imagine, that certainly they would be involved in leading worship, they would be involved in organizing the community, they would be involved in teaching the faith, and they would be involved in different rituals, including circumcision and marriage. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
Who can have a family, priests or rabbis, and do you agree with this?
In the Latin Church, generally the Church will only ordain men who have been called to celibacy. Sometimes they make an exception, especially currently under something called the pastoral provision, where they will sometimes ordain as priests former Protestant ministers who are married. But generally, in the Western Church, priests are not married and do not have children. Rabbis not only do not have that restriction, but Judaism has such a high emphasis upon marriage and family that I think it would be very much expected for a rabbi to have a wife and children. And I agree with both of those, because for all that a rabbi is, a priest is something more. And it's worth noting that rabbis are not priests. And there are Jewish families that know that they descend from the tribe of Levi, and know that they are of priestly families. But what priests did with regard to the Jewish temple is not the same thing that rabbis do today. Those priests had restrictions on them, not in terms of marrying, but they had other restrictions of kinds of things that they could do or not do. So it is, I believe, appropriate that priests should be ordained from men who have been called to celibacy because of their connection as acting in the person of Christ.
Can you name some of the Christian religions, like the branches? And if you can, can you list them?
Well, I actually was raised Protestant, and I happen to be teaching on this somewhat just a couple days ago. There were some further Eastern churches that split off earlier within Christian history that are called things like the Oriental Orthodox churches, and the Assyrian Church of the East, and so on. The Great Schism occurred in 1054 between Catholics and Orthodox. And then in the early 1500s came the Protestant Reformation, where a lot of groups split off from within the Catholic Church. The four sort of main roots historically within the Protestant groups can be identified as the Lutherans, which is connected to Martin Luther and to countries like Germany, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Then the Reformed, or sometimes called Calvinist root, which is connected to John Calvin, and can be connected especially to Holland and Scotland. Then the whole English grouping, which has some contradictory elements within it. Part of that's tied to Henry VIII splitting off of the Anglican Church, but not only that, because the Puritans, who are also the Congregationalists, were already there and already wanted him to go further. And there's a lot of groupings that come out of the English. And then there's the Anabaptists, which is especially connected with Ulrich Zwingli. Directly descended are not a lot of groups. The Mennonites and the Amish are among them. They're the more radical reformers. And although I don't know there's that many groups that descend directly from them, I think they've had a great deal of influence over time. So that today, it might be that a lot of Protestants are more influenced by them than the other three roots. But I could start listing groups. Do you want more groups listed?
That's fine. Thank you. What are the main differences between Judaism and Christianity?
Well, Christianity comes from Judaism, and we believe that we are a completion and fulfillment of Judaism. That St. Paul speaks of how those Gentiles, those non-Jews who came to believe in Jesus, were like branches of other olive trees being grafted onto the olive tree that is the chosen people. Today, many years ago when I was looking at this, when Jewish people speak of what they object to in Christian belief and practice, I could see that there were four things that stood out. They objected to the belief that a man could be God, thus that Jesus Christ could be true God and true man. They objected to the doctrine of the Trinity, that there could be three persons in one God. They objected to the idea that the Messiah would suffer, and they objected to the idea that the law, and indeed the entire system set up under the Old Covenant, could in any way be temporary or superseded. And yet we believe that the Messiah has come, that in his first coming he suffered and rose again, the first fruits of the resurrection, and that he in a sense took everything that had been revealed and that was part of the life of the Jewish people and raised it higher, so that the temple, the sacrifices, the priesthood, divine revelation, everything that was there has all been in a sense not lost but transformed and raised to a higher level in Christ. A lot of these answers could go on and on and on.
What is the relationship between Catholicism and Christianity?
Well, different people use the word Christianity in different ways. Some will use the word Christianity in referring only to themselves and will end up excluding Catholicism from that. The way that Catholics generally use the term, we understand Christianity to include, in a general way, all who believe and follow Christ, and Catholicism to be the fullness of that. And therefore, we know that we share with other Christians who are not Catholic, we share with them baptism, we share with them faith in Christ, we share with them many elements of truth and grace. We have a lot in common, but we also have some very significant differences, and otherwise we wouldn't be separated as we are. We today tend to speak of those Christians who are not Catholic as our separated brethren, brothers and sisters, but that we are currently somewhat separated from each other.
All right.